Have you ever seen someone get judged just because of their job or the color of their skin? Today's story is about a delivery driver who faces public humiliation at the hands of a racist CEO. But here's the twist: this driver isn't who the CEO thinks he is. He's not just any driver, he owns the company. If you're ready for more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button so you never miss out. Richard Grayson is a man who's always been at the top. Born into a wealthy family, he inherited a business empire built on steel and concrete. But his attitude was just as cold. Richard's success wasn't the result of kindness or humility. It was born from ruthless decisions, an iron grip on his employees, and an unshakable belief that some people were simply worth more than others. He ran his company with an air of superiority, a man who never bothered to look twice at those he considered beneath him. In Richard's world, you were either important or invisible, and he made sure everyone knew exactly where they stood. Then there's Marcus Williams, a man whose life couldn't be more different. Marcus didn't come from wealth or privilege. He grew up in a working-class neighborhood where every dollar mattered and respect was earned, not given. Marcus was a man who took pride in his work, no matter the job. From a young age, he learned that dignity isn't something someone gives you. It's something you carry within yourself, no matter how the world treats you. And it was that sense of quiet confidence and hard-earned respect that helped him build a small delivery business into a thriving company. But to Richard, Marcus was just another delivery driver, someone whose only purpose was to carry boxes from point A to point B. When Marcus walked into Richard's office on this particular day, he was doing what he always did, delivering packages with professionalism and a smile. But the second Richard saw him, something changed. Richard's face twisted into a sneer. To him, Marcus wasn't just a delivery driver. He was a black man in a space Richard thought he didn't belong in. Without a shred of hesitation, Richard lunged into a tirade in front of his staff. He mocked Marcus for his appearance, his job, and the color of his skin, calling him names that no one should ever have to hear. He made it clear in no uncertain terms that he thought Marcus didn't belong in his office. Richard's words were laced with superiority, each one designed to make Marcus feel small and insignificant. In that moment, Richard believed he was in control. He thought he had the power to tear Marcus down with his words. What Richard didn't know, what no one in that office knew, was that Marcus was far from just a delivery guy. Behind the simple uniform and the humble demeanor was the owner of the very company that kept Richard's business running smoothly. Marcus had built his logistics business from the ground up, one delivery at a time, with the same dedication and work ethic that had defined his life. Now, the man Richard thought he could crush with words was the one who had the power to change everything. As Richard's insults echoed through the office, Marcus remained calm. He didn't retaliate, he didn't argue. He simply listened, knowing that the time would come when Richard would learn just how wrong he had been. The man he had tried to humiliate wasn't someone who could be easily dismissed, and soon Richard would discover that not all power comes from wealth or status. As Marcus stepped into Richard Grayson's office, it was clear that something wasn't right. The office staff, used to following Richard's lead, threw him judgmental glances, as if he didn't belong. He could feel the weight of their stares as he quietly approached the front desk with his package. Richard, sitting in his lavish office chair, noticed Marcus, and his expression changed instantly, disdain creeping across his face. Without hesitation, Richard began to speak, his voice dripping with arrogance and condescension. "What's this? A delivery driver in my office? Don't you people know how to use the back entrance?" Richard didn't stop there. In front of everyone, he launched into a verbal assault, throwing racial slurs and mocking Marcus for his job. "This is what you do with your life, delivering packages? You must be proud. I bet you didn't even finish high school." The room fell silent, the staff watching the scene unfold with uneasy glances. but none daring to speak up. They had seen Richard's temper before, and no one wanted to be his next target. However, Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't argue or show anger. He listened quietly, his expression calm and composed as Richard continued to belittle him. Marcus had heard insults like this before. He had faced prejudice and discrimination throughout his life. But today he stood tall, knowing that this situation was different. Richard assumed he was just another worker, someone who could be pushed around. But Marcus knew something Richard didn't. As Richard finished his tirade, he smirked, satisfied with himself, believing that he had put Marcus in his place. But what he didn't realize was that the very man he had just humiliated held more power than he could ever imagine. Marcus took a deep breath, still composed, and quietly handed over the package without saying a word. His calm demeanor only seemed to fuel Richard's sense of superiority. But inside, Marcus knew this wasn't the end. Richard may think he won this round, but what he didn't know was that Marcus had a plan. He wasn't just going to walk away from this without a response. He was going to teach Richard a lesson in the most unexpected way possible. As Marcus left the office, he reflected on the moment. He could have easily fought back, defended himself, or thrown insults in return. But that wasn't who Marcus was. He knew the real power lay in staying composed, in showing grace where others showed cruelty. And in the back of his mind, he knew that Richard's reckoning was coming. The staff, still frozen in their seats, glanced at each other, unsure of what just happened. They had never seen someone react to Richard's cruelty with such calm. They wondered if Marcus was just another delivery driver used to being mistreated. But little did they know, this quiet man was about to turn their entire world upside down. The following day, Marcus returned to the same building. But today, he wasn't dressed in his delivery uniform. He wasn't carrying any packages or wearing the humble look of a man doing his job. No, today was different. Marcus arrived in a sleek, tailored suit, one that matched the confidence and quiet power he carried within him. He walked through the lobby with purpose, and this time people took notice. As he stepped into the office, the same staff members who had seen him the day before did double takes. Some recognized him but couldn't quite place why the same man who had been delivering packages yesterday was now striding through the office like he owned the place. Their confusion grew as Marcus walked past the receptionist without hesitation and requested a meeting with Richard Grayson. Not as a delivery driver, but as a business executive. The receptionist, unsure of what to make of this sudden shift, asked Marcus to wait. She called Richard's office, her voice shaky with uncertainty. "Mr. Grayson, there's someone here to see you, Marcus Williams. He says it's important." Richard, who had barely given Marcus a second thought after the previous day's encounter, was irritated by the disruption. "Marcus Williams? Who's that?" "Oh, the delivery guy. What could he possibly want?" Richard scoffed, still unaware of the storm that was about to hit him. But when Richard stepped out of his office to meet Marcus, his confident smirk disappeared in an instant. Standing before him was the same man he had humiliated, but something was different. Marcus didn't have the posture of a delivery driver anymore. He had the air of a man who belonged in a boardroom, a man who commanded respect. "Mr. Grayson," Marcus began, his voice calm and controlled, "I'm here to discuss the business between our two companies. You see, I'm not just the man who delivers your packages. I'm the owner of the company that handles all your logistics, and today we need to talk." Richard's face went pale. The weight of Marcus's words hit him like a freight train. The man he had mocked and insulted was actually the owner of the very company his business relied on. The realization settled in slowly, and the arrogance that had once filled Richard's voice was nowhere to be found. He stammered, trying to process the situation. How could this be? How had I missed this? Marcus stood tall, his composure never wavering while Richard struggled to find the words. The office staff, overhearing bits of the conversation, began to understand what was happening, and a wave of quiet astonishment rippled through the room. The man they had all dismissed as just a delivery driver was actually the one in control of a business far larger than any of them had imagined. For the first time, Richard was no longer in charge. The power had shifted, and it was in Marcus's hands now. But Marcus wasn't there for vengeance. He was there to make a point that respect is earned, and no one, no matter their position, should be treated the way Richard had treated him. Richard stepped out of his office, still holding onto the remnants of the arrogance he was known for, expecting this to be another moment where he could quickly dismiss Marcus and move on with his day. But the moment he looked into Marcus's eyes, he knew something was different. There was no hesitation in Marcus's stance, no trace of the man he had belittled the day before. Before Richard could speak, Marcus's calm voice cut through the air. "I'm here for a business meeting with you," he said, his voice steady and controlled. "I own the company that handles your deliveries." Those words hit Richard like a punch to the gut. He stood frozen, his mind racing to catch up. This couldn't be true. The man he had mocked, the man he had humiliated in front of his entire staff, wasn't just some delivery guy. He was the owner of the logistics company his business depended on. The color drained from Richard's face as the weight of the revelation settled in. For the first time, Richard Grayson, the man who prided himself on being the most powerful person in the room, was no longer in control. Marcus continued, unbothered by Richard's obvious discomfort. "You see, Mr. Grayson, I've been working closely with your company for quite some time. I oversee all of your deliveries, and yesterday I came by in person to ensure everything was running smoothly. Unfortunately, I wasn't treated with the respect or professionalism that I expect from my business partners." Richard struggled to speak, his voice shaky as he tried to regain some semblance of authority. I didn't know. I didn't realize." But Marcus wasn't interested in excuses. He remained composed, his voice firm but respectful. "It's not about what you knew, Mr. Grayson. It's about how you treated someone you thought was beneath you. It's about respect, something I value deeply in my business relationships." The tension in the room was palpable. The staff, who had witnessed Richard's tirade the day before, now watched in stunned silence. They had never seen their CEO so shaken, so vulnerable. Yet there was no anger in Marcus's tone, no vengeance. Just the quiet power of a man who knew his worth and wasn't afraid to stand up for himself. Richard, desperate to salvage the situation, tried to regain control. I didn't mean any harm. This is a misunderstanding, surely." But Marcus wasn't letting him off that easily. "The misunderstanding, Mr. Grayson, is that you believe someone's value could be measured by their appearance or their job title. That's where you went wrong." For the first time in his life, Richard Grayson was at a loss for words. The room, which was once his kingdom, felt smaller now, like the walls were closing in. The very man he had insulted was now standing in front of him as an equal. No, not just an equal. Someone who had the upper hand. Marcus could have easily retaliated, could have used this moment to tear Richard down the way he had been torn down the day before. But that wasn't who Marcus was. Instead, he took a step closer, locking eyes with Richard. "I didn't come here today to seek revenge. I came here to remind you, and everyone in this room, that respect goes both ways. I'm not here to humiliate you the way you tried to humiliate me, but I do want you to understand that the way you treat people matters. From now on, we will conduct our business with mutual respect or not at all." Richard's face flushed with embarrassment, but he knew there was nothing he could say. The power he once held in this office had evaporated, leaving him exposed and humbled. He nodded, unable to find the words to respond. As Marcus turned to leave, he had made his point. He didn't need to yell or throw insults. His calm composure and unshakable dignity had spoken louder than anything Richard could have said. And as Marcus walked out of the office, the staff looked at him with newfound respect, realizing that true power doesn't come from wealth or status. It comes from how you carry yourself in the face of adversity. Richard was left standing there, speechless. The weight of his mistake crushed down on him, and he didn't know what to say. The smug confidence he always carried was gone, replaced with a look of disbelief and regret. Around him, his staff were just as stunned. They remembered the insults, the way Richard publicly humiliated Marcus, and now they were faced with the truth. The man they all thought was just a delivery driver held far more power than any of them had imagined. Marcus, however, remained calm and steady as ever. He could have used this moment to return the humiliation, to give Richard a taste of his own medicine in front of everyone. But that's not who Marcus was. Instead, he seized this opportunity to discuss something much bigger than the insult he received. Looking Richard in the eye, Marcus spoke with authority but also with grace. "This isn't about what happened yesterday," he said. "It's about respect, something that should be given to every person, no matter their job or background. We're all here to do our part, and no one is above treating others with dignity." The room was silent. Everyone was listening. Marcus's words hung in the air, carrying a deeper weight. He wasn't just speaking to Richard. He was speaking to everyone in that office. The message was clear. Respect is not earned through wealth or power. It's something everyone deserves, no matter their position. Richard lowered his head slightly, too ashamed to meet Marcus's gaze. He knew he couldn't undo what he said, and he knew Marcus was right. In that moment, it was no longer about the business deal or the power dynamics. It was about a simple truth that Richard had overlooked for far too long. Marcus walked out of that office with his head held high, his calm confidence intact but now even stronger. He was the same man who walked in just a few minutes ago, yet so much had changed. His words, his actions, they weren't just about proving a point to Richard. They were about showing the power of dignity, of holding yourself with grace in the face of disrespect. Marcus didn't have to shout. He didn't need to humiliate Richard in return. His quiet strength did all the talking. As Marcus made his way out of the building, the staff watched him go with newfound respect. Just yesterday, they had seen him as someone beneath their notice, a delivery driver, a face they could forget as soon as the door closed behind him. But now, they saw the truth. Marcus was more than they had ever imagined. An intelligent, successful businessman who built something from nothing. They realized that you never truly know someone's story, not by their job title or the way they looked. And in that moment, Marcus wasn't just a businessman. He was a reminder of what integrity looks like. Back in his office, Richard was left standing there, still reeling from the encounter. The man who always believed he had the upper hand, who thought his wealth and status gave him power over others, was now confronted with a reality he couldn't escape. His mind raced, replaying Marcus's words, his calm demeanor, and the respect he commanded without ever raising his voice. Richard's arrogance, which had once been his armor, felt heavy now, like a burden he'd carried for far too long. For the first time, he was forced to look inward, to reflect on the way he treated people. Not just Marcus, but everyone around him. He began to realize that true success isn't just about the business you run or the money you make. It's about the way you treat people, the respect you give, and the character you show, especially when you think no one is watching. The staff, too, were left with a lesson they didn't expect. They had seen their powerful CEO humbled, and they couldn't ignore the change in the air. The hierarchy that once ruled this office felt different now, as if the invisible lines between important and unimportant had started to blur. They realized that anyone, regardless of their role, could be carrying a story, a success, or a power that you'd never guess by looking at them. And maybe, just maybe, that was something they'd carry with them moving forward. For Marcus, this experience was more than just a business interaction. As he left the office, he reflected on the journey that brought him here. From humble beginnings, he worked hard, faced countless obstacles, and built his business with integrity. But through it all, he never forgot the lessons that truly mattered: hard work, perseverance, and, most importantly, respect for others. No matter who they are or where they come from, Marcus didn't need to prove anything to Richard or anyone else in that office. His success spoke for itself. But this moment served as a reminder that it's not just what you achieve that defines you. It's how you carry yourself, especially when others try to tear you down. Success is built not only on what you do, but on how you treat the people around you, even when they don't give you the respect you deserve. And so, with his head held even higher than before, Marcus walked away, knowing that he had left more than just an impression. He had left a message that would stay with Richard, the staff, and everyone who witnessed what happened that day. You never know who someone truly is just by looking at them, and sometimes the people you think are the least important can end up being the ones with the most power. Thanks for sticking with us through this powerful story of respect, humility, and quiet strength. If the story resonated with you, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can hear more real-life lessons and inspiring stories just like this one. What would you have done if you were in Marcus's shoes? Would you have reacted the same way or taken a different path?